I'm Effie Parks. Welcome to Once Upon a Gene, the podcast. This is a place I created for us to connect and share the stories of our not-so-typical lives. Raising kids who are born with rare genetic syndromes and other types of disabilities can feel pretty isolating. What I know for sure is that when we can hear the triumphs and challenges from others who get it, we can find a lot more laughter, a lot more hope, and feel a lot less alone. I believe there are some magical healing powers that can happen for all of us through sharing our stories, and I'll take all the help I can get.
Once Upon a Gene is proud to be part of Bloodstream Media. Living in a family affected by rare and chronic illness can be isolating, and sometimes the best medicine is connecting to the voices of people who share your experience. This is why Bloodstream Media produces podcasts, blogs, and other forms of content for patients, families, and clinicians impacted by rare and chronic diseases. Visit bloodstreammedia.com to learn more.
Hello, and welcome to the podcast. This is Once Upon a Gene, and I'm your host, Effie Parks. And today we're trying something a little bit different. This is going to be a 4-part series on caregiver archetypes, okay? These are simple patterns that we all slip into when life gets loud. This isn't therapy homework. It's a practical language for noticing your stress and choosing a kinder next step. I don't even know if I explained that correctly, but you will learn it from my guest today, who's actually my sister. She's guided me my entire life, but especially in some tumultuous times in my adult life. She's helped me spot my stress loops and my thought patterns and my systems that are sort of pushing me one way or another. And she's taught me to be more aware and more compassionate and to honor and improve on them. So if you remember way back in the day, in my baby podcasting days, she was introduced on episode 29, which is one of the best life-changing episodes of my personal journey through motherhood with raising Ford. She taught me about oxygen masks. So it's a great caregiver self-care episode. I highly recommend you go listen to it if you haven't. She also appeared on episode 239, where she mapped out how stress shows up in the body as real pain. So anyways, we have her back for this 4-part series that I'm really excited about. Again, it's a little different. Open your mind, okay? Have a sip of water. Zero perfection here. We're just getting curious. So episode 1 in this series is the child archetype. And she's going to introduce that part of us that longs to belong and dream big and also wants to slam the door shut and shout, "It's not fair, I hate you." She's going to show you how to spot your inner child and soothe them without letting them drive the bus, and swap the "I have no choice" for small resourcing choices that you can make today. So anyways, again, turn it up, open your mind, relax into it. This is fun and different, and I just love this magical, mystical side of my sister, and it's really, really had a profound impact and been such a help to me personally. So please enjoy my conversation with Christy Foster, and this episode we're introducing, again, the child archetype. Hello, Christy Foster. Welcome back to the podcast.
Hello, Effie Lynn. Good to see you. Well, good to hear from you.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you back as usual. The last time anybody saw you, you were featured on The Revival. So we all had so much fun. So thanks for joining that. And so many people have been following you since for all of your magical wisdom and insight. So today we're going to have a very different than usual sort of conversation, and also very cool. And this one's going to make you think a lot. And I think we're going to have a lot of conversations from it. So we're talking about archetypes, Christy, and I'm just going to let you go into it and explain it, because I'm not going to be able to do any of those definitions justice, and specifically archetypes for rare disease caregivers, parents who have children with medically complex issues.
Okay, that's a big bite to chew. Thank you, Effie. So how I would like to start is let's create a structure of what is an archetype. We all speak archetype. It's actually a language. So let me give you an example. An archetype is a pattern of behavior or thought. So when we say he is such a nerd or he is such a geek, the nerd and geek are an archetype. We understand them without anyone having to explain them. Or if we say she's a princess, he's a knight, He likes to save women. That's a pattern of behavior called the knight. Let me think of some really popular ones. She's such a queen in that the queen always gets her way. We all understand what the pattern indicates. A good mother, quote unquote, is an archetypal pattern. And so what the structure that I want you to understand today is, okay, Christy, so there's archetypal patterns. What are my archetypes? And as we begin, we're going to start from the very beginning. So an archetypal pattern is a thought or behavior that lives in what's called the collective unconscious, which is what Carl Jung came up with. And it's like a blueprint of energy that shows up across time and cultures. So even when we think of the gods, like Zeus, everyone has heard of Zeus. We understand that archetype of Zeus or Hades. So please know that you already understand it. It's just putting it into context to grasp what we're going to say, and I'll make it easier as we go through. So the first one is to understand that these are patterns of behavior and we all have them. Now, a woman named Carolyn Myss, really her work on this planet has been teaching about archetypes, and I've studied with her for 25 years. And she came up with what are called the 4 survival archetypes from Carl Jung's work, because I do want to reference her because she is the genius behind that discovery. And how I want to introduce this, so the 4 survival archetypes, we have child, we have saboteur, we have victim, and what's called prostitute archetype. So today I'm going to take you through a little bit of a story before we go deep. So all of us have seen Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, I'm assuming. Effie, you've seen Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz?
Yes, of course.
Okay, perfect. So in Dorothy, all of the characters represent the archetypes, and each one of those archetypes represent these 4 survival archetypes that we as human beings hold. So Dorothy represents the child archetype. We see her as a young girl and she sings Somewhere Over the Rainbow. I won't sing to you. I'll save you from that. And I Have a Dream, Once Upon a Dream. And she is longing for this dream. And she's also longing for home. So remember, she was like an orphan child in the show, and she was being taken care of by Auntie Anne and the 2 uncles. And she wanted to feel like she had a place that she belonged. And at some point, I think in most every human being's life, we ask that question, who am I and where do I belong? This is the essence of Dorothy, and it's also based in innocence, because every child that is born on the planet is innocent, and we would all agree with that. And understanding Dorothy as the innocent child, longing for home, looking for that dream, searching for it, and then the story begins to take us through. So that's where we're going to start. And let me go through the characters in The Wizard of Oz, and we're going to today just talk about Dorothy, but I want to do all 4 so you can put it into context. So we have the child, Dorothy, and then I want you to see in your mind's eye the Tin Man. And if you remember, he was a man, tin. They had to oil him all the time to get him to move. And the Tin Man in the archetypal structure represents what's called the prostitute archetype, which represents value and integrity in the heart. So the Tin Man represents this prostitute in the question being asked, what do I have to do, be, or say to have you love me? And it's really about value. And we will touch on that in the prostitute archetype. And we'll go to Scarecrow now. The Scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz represents the saboteur. And the saboteur is about choice, doubt, and empowerment. And the saboteur is a very, very tricky one, because the saboteur is extremely smart, but the tendency for the Scarecrow not to trust his intellect, he kind of goes all floppy and he seems like he's not smart enough to figure it out. And we all have that piece in us, and that also will go through. The Cowardly Lion would be the victim archetype. So remember, the Cowardly Lion would grab his tail because he was scared and he didn't trust himself either. The lion and the victim archetype in The Wizard of Oz is about power, boundaries, and courage. If you remember in the show, and I highly recommend you watch the show as you follow this podcast, because it'll make it so much easier to relate to what I'm saying. The lion was so afraid, and at the very end, he was grabbing his tail and singing about how afraid he was. And by the end, he found his voice, he found his courage, and that is what we watch, the cowardly lion, the victim going from victim to victorious, which is finding his inner warrior. And then we come down to the wizard, which I absolutely love because we live in a world of illusion in every way, shape, and form. Because what's on the internet, most of it is illusion. And what people want us to believe or see isn't real most of the time. Now, the wizard created this illusion that Dorothy came to Oz and everything was beautiful and magical. And the wizard was this huge being of magic, a magician. And yet when she pulled the curtain back, it was this little tiny man creating this big illusion. Now, the wizard represents us. It is not outside of us. It is for us to find our sovereignty and identity within that we are the ones behind the curtain being us, our lives. And understanding the 4 archetypes is one of the most important pieces, because as we can understand it as human beings, then we can actually see the patterns, which is what this podcast is about. See the patterns of the behavior, notice what the language is attached to each archetype, and then we can make a different choice based on what we are observing. And so I'm going to pause here, Effie. Do you have any questions before I move into the child archetype?
I just want to keep listening because I'm really fascinated.
If you have a question, please interject, because I eat, breathe, and live this every day. Please know that I understand people don't.
I guess I'll just start with one. Does
Please.
everyone have one of these archetypes at all times? They go between them, or does one really, are they going to identify with one of these as we go through this podcast more?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
So you kind of move through different phases of your life and experiences and reactions, and maybe that sort of puts which archetype comes to the top at that point.
Yes.
Okay.
And the understanding of the language of how the archetype speaks. So today we're going to talk about child archetype. If we can understand, all of us were born, right? We all came out of a woman's womb. That makes us, at one time we were a child. So we all have a child archetype. And in our own experience of being a child, this architecture develops so beautifully and complex, because depending on your life experience as a child and what kind of child you were. So there's various kinds of child archetypes. So let me give you a few. There's an enchanting child. There is a magical child. There is a nature child. There is a abandoned child, a wounded child, an invisible child, and I think I said an orphan child. So there's many different types of child that we would identify with. So if we go back to what I would ask you to ask yourself is, what in my childhood, how was that for me? So if we talk about a nature child, did you like to be out in nature? And were you out in nature often? And are you out in nature today? If you only go out in nature once in a while, you're not a nature child. It would be someone who eats, breathes, lives in nature, and that's what soothes them. That's what helps them connect back to themselves. How would you identify you as a child? Effie, is there anything that going through those that you identify with?
I mean, I definitely felt like I've been a lot of those. I think maybe the one that made my eyes go like this was the invisible child. You know, I'm one of 13 kids towards the end, and kind of before the younger ones still, I feel like. So it was a very weird time. So I definitely felt like that. Nature has always calmed me. I've always been kind of camping or climbing or hiking, and now I'm just walking, but that one definitely was a wounded child. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And with 13 children, you and I are obviously sisters. For me, I would also identify with invisible child. And that's only 2 out of 13. Everyone would be different. But we identify with what we understand in the language. So getting lost in the shuffle, not being seen, not being heard, has to do with the invisible child. And then as you're growing up and we begin to understand and see the patterns of, how do I make myself invisible, or do I tend to have that be one of my go-to responses when I get triggered is to become invisible. That would be a very clear indication that you're in your child archetype, for you, Effie, and for me, because I share that archetype. When I feel like I'm not being heard or I really want to disappear, the child in me is activated. And that's what we're going to pay attention to, is what are the language, the sentences that a child might say. So let me go over a few of these with you. The child archetype is about responsibility and growing up. So as a little one, the child archetype is the guardian of innocence, vision, and dreams, because every little child has a dream. And sometimes little children don't get the opportunity to really even understand that they have a dream. The dreams are fostered. Every experience is so different. And a child is looking for protection. A child wants to be taken care of. There tends to be in children a resistance to responsibility and growing up. The child represents innocence and wonder. And if you notice, so here again, this archetype, the challenges with it, some of that might be, I don't want to grow up. Sentences like, this isn't fair. Why me? All of these sentences are things a child would say. Or, I'm not allowed. I'm not allowed to do that, is what a child would say. Someone else needs to fix this, because a child can't fix it. An adult can. And even something like, well, there's never enough time for me. I have to take care of everyone else. That would be a child archetype, because it doesn't feel like it can be sovereign and take responsibility for self. And so let me just preface, as you're listening, please stay neutral and hear the information, because every individual story is different, or just understanding the structure of what a child would say. And as we observe the child, the whole idea is to hear when your child is activated and you begin to dance with it versus make it go away. So for example, if I get triggered, my tendency would be to say, I just want to get out of here. I'm aware that my child's activated, my inner child speaking, and the adult in me would say, okay, Christy, now you just stand right here, or I'm going to put you in my pocket or put you in my little heart. And the adult in me is going to handle this situation, not the child in me. And Effie, that sounds really simplistic, and it isn't. Because depending on how much healing you've had or trauma you've had, the difficulty can be there to varying degrees. And that's true. So as you look at this and pay attention to, like, to ask yourself, when I'm around someone, who would be someone that you're around that activates that child in you? And also, who are you around that doesn't activate it? So you can start to get a feeling for when your child gets activated and who is able to activate you in your child archetype.
Is it always a person, or is it also a situation? Like the day to day?
It can be both. It can be both, Effie, because a situation like in your example, because you have Ford, and I'm sure there's many days, Effie, that you say, this is so not fair, right?
I definitely have practiced over the last couple of years to not say that, but absolutely feel like that when I'm extremely overloaded and it's not good. Yes.
Yes. And so, Effie, here's the piece. So if the child gets activated, it's not fair is only one sentence. Let's use that for example. Okay. So you have come to a point where you realize, okay, don't say that anymore. A child will say it's not fair and often not have a choice in the fairness, right? You still have to go to your room, or you're still grounded. I don't care if you think it's fair or not fair. And today, the adult in you, Effie, hears that piece of, this just is hard and this isn't fair. The adult in you takes your hand and says, I so hear you, Effie, and you're right. And this is how I'm going to support you.
My God, 100%.
So we move from our child to our sovereign, which is adult self. Who's driving our bus? Is the child driving our bus? Stomping their feet, having temper tantrums, pouting, being passive aggressive or aggressive, right? Slamming doors. Who is being activated? And that's what these 4 survival archetypes are about, is if we can notice that, it's not a bad thing, it's not negative, but to dance in between them. So if you're noticing that you're kicking the door or you're slamming windows or you're just pissed. Okay. And we take some breaths, and then how can I resource you? That's the adult in you asking the little Effie in you. Okay, Effie, let's name some resources. Go on a walk, go sit somewhere quiet for a few minutes, have a cup of coffee, step out of the situation. That's the adult, right? The adult would say to a little kid having a temper tantrum, let's talk when you're done. That's how I want you to look at it as an adult, because that child always exists in you. It doesn't go away. And most often, the child will get activated when you're around your family, guaranteed, because we go back into a family structure where we feel it's easy to feel the same way as you did as a kid. And all those activations start coming in. And that's one of the beautiful pieces about this work is if you understand that. And with my clients, because I do a lot of archetypal work, I will have them get a picture of themselves, put it on their phone. So when their child gets activated, they can look at the picture, because let me speak for myself. I would never look at a little child and say, you are so stupid. What the actual hell are you doing this for? But I would say it to myself in the mirror. So to be gentle, if your child's activated, for example, to look at the picture, take a deep breath. And I would say, you know what, Christy, little Christy, I so see you. And I understand you're activated. I can feel that. I'm going to give you some room to be activated. And then I'm going to take you for a walk, honey, because I'm your mama now. Your mama's not your mama. I am your mama, right? Because
That's
our
such a good
mothers
reminder,
and fathers
Christy.
cannot give us what we don't have. And they are not, once we become adult, it's not their job to meet our needs, because they can't. It's our job. But if we don't know what the hell our needs are, how are we going to meet them? And we're always waiting for mommy or daddy or someone else outside of us to meet our needs. Child archetype in shadow. And when I say in shadow, I probably need to make a little dictionary for your podcast.
Yeah.
When I say in shadow, what that means is those are the parts of us that we can't see, that we are blind to, those patterns of behavior. And like one of those would be if you get activated and you've watched a pattern in your upbringing of mom always shuts down when she gets upset. So I shut down. Yeah. And if you notice yourself shutting down, for example, or getting angry, that's a sign that you need a resource. The little child in you needs you to resource it and to let it know that it's not driving your bus. The adult is. You're not shaming the child, which is why I have you have a picture and say, you know what, I am your parent today. I'm reparenting you. I will meet your needs. That's called sovereignty. That is called power. That is self-esteem. Because if we have a choice and we can make a choice, that's power. If we don't have a choice, someone has power over us. And when you're growing up as a child, the adults in your world have power over you. That's just true. And you do as you're told. Consequences are in place. And then what tends to happen is we recreate those patterns into adulthood. And we continue to act from our child versus the adult in us because we don't understand how to get out of the glitch, or what's also called the psychic prison. How do I get out of this loop? And how we get out is to actually notice what is going on in our heads. And there are different parts of us that get scattered when there's trauma, get scattered into childhood. And as adults, it's our job to gather the pieces back and create a sovereign human being. Yes, we have cracks in our glass. However, and so does everybody else. And this, we can only do us. And if we can make sure our child in us still has a dream, Effie, what's your dream? As I see, I'm looking at you, I know we're being recorded, I see a rainbow behind you that probably one of your kids painted. That's an indication of a dream, right? So if I were to ask you, Effie, what's your dream that you always had as a kid? What would that be? Some people don't even know.
Unicorns and Rainbow Bright.
Right? Okay, and Effie, that's a very good identification that you probably have the magical child archetype because you just named magic, right? Rainbow Bright and butterflies and unicorns. All of those are magic. So you would have the magic or the mystical child archetype, which is why you love it.
I definitely think I've been a witch several times.
Okay, so I know I have, and I know I still am. That's very real for me.
You definitely are our witch.
I am. And I so own that because that is part of my archetypal structure. And I completely own it because it is my gift within the archetype, which would also mean as a child, I would have been a magical child. Yes. And I was also a wounded child. You're not just one in childhood because we have experiences where sometimes the magic is sucked out of us. Sometimes there's not a place for magic because there's too much chaos. Sometimes magic is fostered and you become, this amazing human that could do many great things because it was fostered as a child all the way up. But if you think back to Dorothy singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, that is the essence of the child archetype. What is my dream? How can I reclaim my innocence? And what my sovereignty, one of my favorite statements that go with child archetype to sovereign, is nothing and no one has power over me. Because how many times I hear it in my practice all the time, well, I can't because so-and-so won't let me. Child archetype is speaking to me, not the adult. When you hear yourself say, so-and-so won't let me, your child is speaking. As an adult, you don't need permission to be you. And I get there's 10,000 conversations tied to that. I'm speaking the very basics, right? How do I reclaim my sovereignty? First, you have to understand that you're in charge of you. You are your own parent now, not your mama, not your daddy. You are your parent. And I have clients do this, and I think this is very helpful. What would a queen stand like?
With perfect posture.
And why would she do that?
Well, because
If you're
she's
a queen,
practiced and she has
Yes.
respect for herself.
But she demands the respect from others through her posture.
Yes.
Yes, it's both. She respects her own sovereign self as queen, and she demands that is in her that you will also respect her. And she's not asking your permission to go pee or to do this or to be that. That's queen archetype. And I have clients practice standing because our body language is 80%. Otherwise, we're just mouthing stuff. But if you can begin to embody the queen, what would a queen stand like? How would she hold herself when she said, no, I'm not going? And that's not simple if there's been a lot of abuse. Please know I understand that. We're talking very basic. How would a queen stand and how would a queen speak? Would she speak like a mouse? I don't know, Effie. Why don't you tell me what you think? And you say, Christy, I can't hear you. That's because I'm not in my queen or king, right? Both meant king, queen. It's the same. It's not gender related. But if you can practice in the mirror, how does my queen, my sovereign sound, how does she direct? And what are her boundaries? This is all about boundaries with child archetype. It's self-responsibility and choice.
So that makes me think of a common statement that almost everyone in this community says. People will say to the caregiver, I don't know how you do it. And the caregiver immediately responds, I don't have a choice. And I do think we have a choice because we could be those really crappy parents who choose vices and who choose many other things. I think we have lots of choices in this. Sure. Do I have a choice that Ford had a genetic disorder? No, of course not. But I don't know how you do it doesn't make me go to the place of I don't have a choice. So what about the child? Is this like a coping mechanism? Is this an unseen mechanism? Like why does everyone say I don't have a choice?
I think it's a natural reaction to something so challenging, Effie. What we're talking about again, and we'll go into more, that would be tied into a little bit of victim archetype, okay, which we'll talk about. I'm not going to go into that on this podcast. And I would say part of that is tied to child as well, because often a child doesn't have a choice. There are many parents who do not give children choices. I'm sorry, you don't get to choose. This is what's happening, right? When you hear yourself say that, please know I have no judgment for that comment. Zero. What I'm asking you to do is when you hear yourself say it somewhere in the day to say, okay, Effie, let's reframe that because you do have a choice. You could go shut yourself in the bedroom. There's lots of choices we could do other than parenting. You do have a choice, Effie, and in that it's a really difficult choice, and I totally respect and understand that. How can I resource you in this moment when you feel pissed off or sad? What is it you need in this moment so you can make a choice to resource yourself?
It's not about judging that comment. You can actually see the difference in someone's entire demeanor once those words come out of their mouth, whether it takes them to anger or to depressive sort of feelings. Like you can see a change when those words come out of someone's mouth.
And you can feel it because it shuts other people down.
Yeah, it does.
Right? And
yeah.
Because it does. How can you argue with that? And I would ask the person saying that, what are you feeling underneath I don't have a choice? When I feel like I don't have a choice, I feel blank. And how can we foster and hold that peace for a moment, maybe 10 times a day until it settles, and ask it, what choice can I make today to take better care of me in this challenge? And that's not easy because the child in us, Effie, and this is the clear child archetype, I don't want to. Stomp our foot, slam the door. It's not fair. I'm pissed. Totally appropriate. But are you going to stay in that behavior for 20 years? Because it's poison in your nervous system. It's poison long term.
So when you're using the child archetype as a constant coping mechanism, you're not getting any growth from it, but you're keeping yourself safe, maybe.
Yes. Well, yes, and probably annoying the hell of everyone you live with. Because I promise you, the reaction outside of you would be, oh my God, they're such a child. They're acting like a child, because we all do that, right? We will language that in describing someone, and we all know what that means. And we've all acted like a child as adults.
Yeah, totally.
Welcome to being human. That's why they're called archetypes. They're patterns of behavior. And we are responsible for us and our behavior. No one else made us do anything. We're responsible for who we are and how we respond to a situation. This is purely to help you get a grasp around, what are my resources? How can I better be responsible for me in a challenge that I have with my child? And that's very difficult when you're activated. You just want to tell everyone to F off.
Do you think that there's any type of way to use your child archetype to be closer to your rare disease child in the way that you care for them, or sort of understand where they're coming from? I don't know if that question makes sense.
No, it totally does, Effie. You cannot give what you don't have. If you have not fostered your own inner child, don't think for a second you can foster another. Because underneath that is rage, underneath that is sadness or shutdown and numbing. Until you can foster and care for the child within you first, you cannot give what you don't have. And everyone knows that statement, right? Put your oxygen mask on first. What that means is healing some of your childhood trauma so it doesn't consume you, and quit identifying with your child archetype. That is not easy to do. Please know I understand what I'm saying. But if you can understand the concept of it, it's much easier to go, okay, Christy, your little child's driving your bus. It might need a glass of water. It might need to go pee. It might need something to eat because you're getting very grouchy and you're about ready to have a temper tantrum or shut down. Or if I need to grab a glass of wine because I'm sick, the noise I can't take or whatever it is, my child archetype is activated. The adult in me has to say, Christy, darling, let's go pee. Let's get a glass of water. Let's consciously have a glass of wine, perhaps, and or ask a resource. Could you please take my kid for 5 minutes? Could you please come over? I need to go. I need a break. That's the adult saying, okay, little Christy, let's take a pause. And I know that sounds simplistic, Effie, and it is. And it's extremely complex as well.
Yes, the asking for help and accepting help is a barrier for many.
That comes from childhood, Effie.
But then it also connects to nobody can do this job, only I can. Nobody can take care of my kid, only I can. Or I don't have family or friends.
That's, yes, and that takes us to victim archetype, which we'll go into.
Okay.
Those are core sentences for the archetype.
Yeah, makes sense. When I went to a workshop of yours several years ago, and just like you mentioned earlier, you had us all bring a picture of our child. I would like everyone to maybe think about doing that as like they're lifting off to explore this, because that was transformational to me to have my picture.
And in what way?
For years. Because I would look at her when I felt all of those things, when my child was activated, when I felt invisible, when I felt like I wasn't, making a difference or doing a good job. I would look at her and I was like,
what would you say?
I would tell her how amazing she was and how much fun she was and how happy she made people and how happy she just was in general.
Yeah. And that's resourcing her where your parents couldn't, Effie. Yeah?
Yeah, it super helped. And I think everyone should do that. In fact, I'm going to go find that picture again and put it on my phone. Thanks for the reminder.
Well, I have in my office, because I live this. I don't just teach it. I live this. I have a picture of my little self in my office. So all my clients see the picture of me. I practice what I preach. I have a picture of me on my phone when I need it. And I have a picture in my bedroom because what it does is it really helps me. It's tangible, right? I can see it and go, oh, that little part of me that felt invisible is feeling invisible. What needs to be heard? Do I need to call someone and be witnessed in my, which I did this morning, Effie. Something happened this morning that a piece of my childhood was activated. And I felt it come up in me. I had a good little cry. I called my friend. I said, I need you to just witness what I'm feeling because I was well aware of what was coming out of me. I blah, 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 blah. That's my resource, right? That I don't have to hold all that shit inside of me. It's been there long enough. It needs to get out. And how it comes out is by me speaking it. So it removes the shame around how I'm feeling.
Totally.
And then I can look at my picture and go, I feel better. But she's not in charge anymore. And that's a practice. It's a practice.
How does that work with guilt? I know guilt is a pervasive state, whether it's guilt for the rest of the family not being able to be there, or guilt that you're not doing enough for your kid, or, guilt in many ways. Where is the child in the feeling of chronic guilt for a caregiver?
Well, I believe, based on what I've studied, what I understand is guilt is taught. Guilt is taught. I used to say, Effie, I was breastfed how to feel guilty. And it's not shaming mother, our mom, but in a world today, and it's getting better, but women in general, well, you should do this because da-da-da-da-da. You should be a good mom. You should be a good wife. What? Guilt is taught and learned to cover up whatever is underneath it. It's very manipulative, and it ensues the idea that something is wrong. Something's wrong with me when I feel guilty. And people say, I feel too guilty. I can't do that. Like, take care of myself. That's a learned behavior from childhood. The difficulty is sitting with the difficulty. I don't like to do that. It makes me uncomfortable. And I would say, yes, Andy, you're already uncomfortable. It's already in you. So let's give it some breathing room to be uncomfortable, to call someone up and say, hey, Effie, I feel super guilty. I'm not asking your opinion or your advice. Let me be super clear. I'm not. I'm asking for you to witness in that Brene Brown calls them gremlins, right? I feel guilty. And the only thing I need you to do, Effie, is witness that and say, I so get it.
Man, you almost feel instantly better when you do that. When you have that one connection, that one person
you
who
only
can
need
truly
one.
do that. Yeah, who can truly do that for you. And sometimes it's the most random person just for that specific situation, right? Or that specific person. And once you get it out, you can see it for what it was, I feel like.
Well, it doesn't poison you anymore because it's poison for your nervous system and for your flesh. Our flesh in our body somatically is our emotional response to life, outside of us and inside of us. So if we have a constant drip of poison, which I would call guilt and shame, that all come from your upbringing, and it's ancestral, right? It isn't just your family. That's generations of learned guilt. And the language of this is what we do in our family. This is who we are. Please. Sometimes that's good. A lot of times it's not. Who are you outside of all that guilt? Who are you outside of shame? Who are you outside of what we do? That's sovereignty. That's the adult saying, nope, I'll take what I want and I'm going to leave the rest. And let me acknowledge trauma is extremely complex. And I would encourage you, if this hurts your brain too much, to please get some resources to help you navigate that part of your life that is still so activated, because that is a natural thing. And I'm not shaming anyone in this. This was developed to help us step out of those patterns and heal and have choice and increase our self-esteem, because we actually have a choice.
So how does one embrace that child? So like that light side of that child for growth and empowerment?
You embrace it by finding what is your dream. Like, for instance, I've always wanted to learn to sing. So to take singing lessons, for example, or to go to ecstatic dance class and remember how it is to dance without structure, to draw without structure and rules. We put so many rules on everything. To foster it is to allow the child to play and to laugh. To foster is to go outside and see the leaves falling and play in the leaves, or play in the rain, or play in the snow. And people will say, well, I never played as a kid. I would invite you to try it. That's how you embody it. It isn't a mental construct. We're understanding it and learning it about it today, But how you embody it is actually through action, not your intellect. That's not how it works.
This might just be with different pieces of emotional stuff, but is there a spot somatically on the body that shows up more so when your child is in charge?
Absolutely. So in somatic work, our base chakra, so our feet, our legs, our butt, the rectum, all of that belongs to what's called base or root chakra, which is all tribal belonging. Remember, the child wants to belong. And when a child doesn't feel like it belongs, some of the things that can happen, or fear continues to come into us as adults. We can get restless legs. We can get insomnia. We can get plantar fasciitis. We can get a lot of varicose veins. The fluid in our body represents emotion. We can get swollen ankles because nothing's moving, and it's all in the base chakra. Sometimes constipation or diarrhea because the little child is afraid to process and let go of blank. It becomes a very physical aspect long term if it's not taken care of. Energy stays regardless of what you think. Energy is made to move, not stay.
Wait, can you say that again? Energy is
made to move. So say you notice you get activated with like not feeling like you belong in a family or in your family system, right? And you can get flooded with emotions. You can physically move, stomp your feet, go on a walk, dance, move your legs on a bed like a child throwing a tantrum. It's actually a thing. You move your legs up and down. The movement is the movement of the energy. And it brings us out of our loop in our brain. It interrupts the loop, which is the whole idea, and bring us back into our body. And then you look at the picture, Effie, that you have and you go, holy shit, that was a good temper tantrum.
Totally.
Right? And then we could look at it and you give the child room to be a child, but it doesn't get to be in charge.
I mean, laying on the bed and kicking my arms and legs does sound pretty fun. Like, I feel like that can help.
It's a great exercise.
You know,
It's
my
a
ankles
great
get
exercise.
swollen sometimes, and most of our kids have this, you know, that shaky plate, that really fast sort of.
Yeah.
Most of our kids
vibration.
have that for, you know, their muscle tone and their bone density. But I'll get on that when my ankles get swollen for whatever reason. I'm keeping something somewhere. And it just, not only is it fun and silly and ridiculous, but it moves all of that out. And I'm like a shoe size down, right? Like my ankle isn't hanging over my shoe.
Well, Effie, let me tie a thread for you on that. Our ankles in psychosomatics, the right side represents father, the left side represents mother.
Oh, it's always my right one. Yeah, it's all a little jumpy over there.
Okay, and what happens in psychosomatic work long term, so if the right side is the masculine, on some level in your childhood, you didn't feel supported by your father, is what I would talk to you about. And it wasn't easy for you to express fluid how you felt to the masculine.
That could literally go on my gravestone. Facts.
Okay. And today, Effie, you have choice, right? When you notice the right ankle getting swollen, to ask yourself, how can I support myself? What do I need to express in the moment? The right side is present time in psychosomatics. The left side is the past. So if you tend to get it more on the right side in your ankle, your system is asking you, this isn't about your father, your system is asking you, Effie, how can I support you? How do I need support now?
Interesting. So I need to start writing down the days that my right ankle gets like that to see what maybe is overwhelming me.
Yes, because I almost promise you it has to do with your child archetype.
Interesting.
And how do we foster and nurture that little one in a different way than forcing, because masculine is about force and trying to outthink it or out-strategize it, and bring in more flow, which is fluid in the ankle.
Yeah, well, it's probably several things, right? All probably involved in caring for Ford, managing all of that. Interesting. Okay, I'm going to totally keep an ankle diary.
I think I would suggest it to everyone because it will help you learn the work easier, because the archetypes are physical too. And that's where I love the marriage between the two, because it shows up in the body. It becomes more dense if we aren't dealing with it. And that's what makes us sick long term.
100%.
And if a part of you needs, like for example, Effie, with your ankle, if a part of you needs to maybe process or still have a piece witnessed about your dad as a kid, Doesn't mean hash it over, but it needs to be acknowledged that a piece was difficult and you didn't feel like you could express. And then you move to the next pot of, okay, how can I support my own masculine, my own self now? Because it's not about him anymore. Don't recreate the same story. How can I support myself in my own masculine, which is doing? Because this work is not about blame in any way, shape, or form. It's about understanding where it came from, giving it some room, and taking a step forward.
And then becoming a queen.
You already are a queen. It's accessing the queen. You already are that, Effie. It's how often can I access it? How often can I foster and hold my body as such, set boundary as such, and request help as I need it as a queen would? A queen doesn't clean her toilet, for example, right? What is it you need help with? I'm going to tell Casey that when I leave this room. Well, don't get me in trouble. But a queen knows what she needs to ask for help. So Effie, like when you know you need help, the queen in you, not the child, would say, like, give us an example in your world.
I would pick up the phone and I would call Casey's mom and I would say, do you have 30 minutes? I need to go for a walk right now.
That's queen, Effie. Do you understand? The child would call and say, this is so unfair. I don't know what to do, and go into this whole spin. But that's queen archetype that you just stepped into, the sovereign of, oh my God, I need to get out of my house. I'm going to call so-and-so and meet my need. Right ankle will not swell when you meet your need. Your body responds automatically every second with every thought and every reaction we have. It is smarter than anything on the planet if we know how to read it and we know how to listen to it. So this is a lot of information. I totally understand that. Listen to it a few times. And once we finish with the archetypes, I'll make a PDF that you can share with your people so they can have something they can look at of what does the child say? What does the saboteur, victim, and prostitute say? And how can I shift that into sovereignty?
Okay.
Because it's really helpful.
It will be really helpful. And then I guess also just a bite-sized sort of resource plan of action. I mean, I guess I would say today, if I could encourage anyone, I would get that picture of you as a child. I would maybe keep a few notes and probably those two things.
Yeah. And I would also have a little notebook to write down when that little child feels it's unfair, when she feels scared and overwhelmed. So you can start to ask her what she needs. Ask the body, what do I need? I think I need a drink of water. I think I need to go pee. I haven't pooped for 3 days, right? Those are needs that people ignore because they learn to ignore them. And then we get sick and we can't figure out why we're sick. And only we can do us.
That's kind of bringing it back to everything, right? Is always just remembering that you're in charge of you. It's hard to remember that sometimes when you're in a place of madness and chaos and stress and sadness.
And that's when you have a resource and you call someone, you say, I feel psychotic. Could you please help me?
Yeah, totally.
Right? That's
totally.
What I did this morning, Effie. I called my friend. I'm like, I'm so aware that this is where I'm at. I just need you to listen to me so I can get it out. And then I feel better.
Totally.
But that's moving the energy, for example, out of my feet and ankles, out of my body so I don't get sick. And I'm not vomiting on her. What I'm expressing is what comes up. She witnesses because we heal with another. We don't heal by ourselves. We heal in community.
That sentence.
And be gentle. This process is till we're dead and we leave the planet. Okay, and that just pulls in your perfectionist child, which many people have.
Oh man, Christy, we should have brought that in because that is also one of the common pieces I hear because there's no control.
Archetype.
And so they go into that perfectionist state because it's the only thing they can control, right? In having a sick kid.
Which is appropriate. And that's a hell of a lot of work. So if you tend to have a perfectionist child archetype, because that's the child speaking, what is it you need to release some of that control? It might be to make a mess with paint with your hands. It might be to, I say almost 100% of the time, to go outside and look at the trees, take out your earbuds, hear the birds, connect back to nature, because that's the disconnection that we've done that's creating such psychosis in our world anyway. That is the divine feminine. We even call her Mother Earth. People are so funny about words. They get all triggered with different words, and I'm so okay with that. We call it Mother Earth for a reason. We need our mother, which is the earth, or we'd be dead. Trees grow, the sun comes up, the moon is here. Air, we breathe in air, we expel air. It's all in community with the Mother Earth. So that's why I say go outside. And I would even go as far as say, Thank you, Mother Earth, without getting weird.
Be like Vicky Alsop and just go hug all the trees for real. Like, it actually makes you feel better.
Well, because it's grounded. It has its root system and you've lost your roots. That's what that means. A tree has deep roots and you lose your root, your grounding. You lean against a tree, you can physically feel it, and it helps us come back to our nature, which is nature.
Totally. Taking off your shoes and socks, walking around the house,
Yes.
outside.
Yeah. So come back to the simplicity of nature, of being outside, of expressing gratitude for an earth that we can walk on. Keep it super simple in a big activation like that. You don't need to think about it. It's a practice of allowing it. And that is a practice with a capital P, and there is no perfect and there is no arrival point. It's a process while we have breath in our bodies. Child archetype would say, I need to do it today and I need to do it right. What does that child need? Can you give that child a little wiggle room that she doesn't need to do it right? There is no right when you have a kid with disability as Effie, because the rules aren't the same. You do the best you can with what you have.
I mean, it is even a little calming, though, to think about talking to your little person, right? Like, it kind of brings even just a little bit of levity in the thought of doing that. And then to actually do it, it's bananas to me how much of an impact that makes by just speaking to her.
Right, because we like the logical mind and we like to think we're actually in control, which we're not. When we're activated, we are not in control. The child is. And so we like to compartmentalize it and control it. My little child never comes out, want to make a bet, right? Give it some room to be human. Give ourselves room to be human. And we came from child. Every one of us grew up into an adult.
It is the only thing we all completely 100% have in common.
We did, because we all grew in a womb and we were all birthed.
That's right.
And so what was your child experience? What did you feel like you didn't have, maybe? Or what did you did have that you could foster more? What are some choices you can make as the queen or king of your life today that are simple?
I'm trying to find your episode, your very first episode. Man, way back in baby times, episode 29. This also kind of speaks to that. Go back and listen to episode 29. Christy talks about having an actual visual that you make and you put on your fridge of your 4 oxygen tanks. So maybe think about it in your child. As we go along in this series, maybe think about the things that pop up in your child, draw the picture of them and what you need. Does that make sense? Would that be something you would do in your oxygen tanks for maybe which archetype is sort of ruling you?
Absolutely, because it's about finding a resource in all the archetypes. Yes. So what is the resource? And choose one. Keep it so simple. Go on a walk, go pee, have a snack, call a friend. So you don't feel like you're crazy, because you're not. You have a hard job that most people can't understand unless they've walked in your shoes.
I could literally talk about this forever. I would really like you to start your podcast on this, please, Christy.
It is started.
Is it published?
Not
published
yet, but we're close. We're on episode 5, I think. I'm getting a few together and then they're going out.
Yes. Okay. Well, tell them what our next episode's going to be on for this series.
Okay. So our next episode, actually, we're going to do the victim archetype, because it's different from child. And the victim remember the victim in The Wizard of Oz, please watch The Wizard of Oz so you can follow me easier, is the lion, the cowardly lion that couldn't find its courage and couldn't find his voice. So victim is about choice as well, in a different way, has a few different nuances, and we'll talk about victim archetype next time. And how it shows up in the body too, because that's so important. As important as the intellectual piece, which I love as much as I love the other. But it will show up physically if long-term you don't shift your patterns of victimhood. So I'm excited, Effie, to go into our next podcast. And I hope to have all of you come and listen and join us in the next episode.
Oh my gosh, me too. Christy, thank you. You're the best. You're the best.
Thank you, Effie.
I hope you've been enjoying this podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this show with your people, and please make sure to rate and review it on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also head over to Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter to connect with me and stay updated on the show. If you're interested in sharing your story, or if you have anything you would like to contribute, please submit it to my website at effieparks.com. Thank you so much for listening to the show and for supporting me along the way. I appreciate y'all so much.
I don't know what kind of day you're having, but if you need a little pick-me-up, Ford's got you.